Today I'm going to be discussing interracial relationships, stereotypes, and whether they are myths and or hold any reality to them. I thought it was important to discuss this because of many of the assumptions that people make about me personally when they see me and my husband walking down the street. If you're someone that's thinking about getting into an interracial relationship or open to the idea, I have talked a little about this on one of my previous videos, which I'll post a link to that above. But I wanted to go into more details regarding some of the stereotypes that one should consider before entering into an interracial relationship. Hi, I'm Colette G, dating and relationship specialist and author. Welcome back to my channel and welcome newcomers. If you like learning about how to date, ways to improve your love life, and or how to improve the relationships that you're already in, then go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and then tick the notification bell so that you're aware of when I drop a new video. So without further ado, let's get into it. So there's a lot to unpack here today. I wanted to do a lot of research, which I have. I didn't want to just add my own personal experiences, although I will be talking a lot about my personal experiences as well. But there's a lot to unpack here when we talk about interracial relationships and we delve into some of the stereotypes. Things have certainly changed, particularly in the US when it comes to 1967 law that was passed that approved people to be able to marry who they wanted to marry based on race and ethnicity. And it was the Loving versus Virginia law that was passed. And I wasn't always in an interracial relationship, although I've always been open to the idea of marrying whoever it was that I loved. I didn't believe that I had to be in a relationship with someone that looked like me, although there was a period in my life when I married partners that looked like me because I thought it'd be easier to connect. I thought it'd be harder for someone from a different ethnic or racial background to understand the plight of what it was to be a Black person, let alone a Black woman, and some of the fears that I had dating someone from a different race based on, what their prejudices might be, what their assumptions might be about me, and some of the stereotypes that people have when it comes to dating a Black woman. Of course, dating different people from different ethnic backgrounds and different racial backgrounds, I have encountered some of those stereotypes, many that I'll be discussing in a few minutes here. But ideally, when it came down to being married to the man that I'm married to today, we are literally a couple that married for love, but also married because of our values. And I think that as we go forward in this video, you'll understand more so how the stereotypes can be construed or projected onto couples without people actually really knowing who you are. But if you've been watching my videos and you know anything about me or we've met in person, then you probably will understand exactly why my husband and I are together. But if you know nothing about me and you just saw us walking down the street, well, I'm going to delve into some of the stereotypes that I have received. But I also wanted to talk about some of the projections that people make when they see different ethnic or racial groups together. Like I said, I'm going to be unpacking a lot of stuff here today. So I have my computer up here because I didn't want to miss any of the points that I wanted to make. I remember doing some research on dating apps, and I deal with a lot of my clients that use dating apps as a tool in order to meet relationship prospects. And some of the things that I noticed was Black women are least likely sought after on dating apps and dating sites, and Asian men as well. And I couldn't understand why this was the case. I still really don't understand it, but the more I delved into this video, I realized that it was based off of certain types of stereotypes that are associated with Black women and Asian men that make them least likely to be sought after on dating apps and dating sites. But on the other side of it, online daters are more likely to cross racial lines if someone else makes the first move. So it's not to say that internet daters are colorblind, but I think that the more and more we use technology, the more likely it is that we reach out to people across the world, and that we're more open to getting to know or learning about people's cultural backgrounds than we were before. And I believe that the more educated we become, not just because of technology, but people are becoming more and more educated today than ever before, that also opens up an opportunity for people to understand, well, that some of the stereotypes that we thought about a particular racial or ethnic group doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. I just watched this really cute movie called You People on Netflix, and I think personally they did a great job in touching on some of the stereotypes and things that interracial couples go through when they're looking to get married, and they really touched on a lot of the stereotypes from both sides. However, I also think that they included a lot of stereotypes as well. This was starring Eddie Murphy, Jonah Hill, Lauren London, Julia Stiles, Nia Long. And these individuals did a great job in this movie, in my opinion. It was really funny. It was very heartfelt. And in this movie, and for those of you who haven't seen it, this is a spoiler alert, Jonah Hill's character meets Lauren's character organically, basically. They didn't meet online or anything. They were just two people that happened to share a lot of the same values, and they met organically in Los Angeles. And this is something that would probably rarely happen to people in LA, I have to say, even though I met my husband organically in Los Angeles doing something that I love to do. We met because I was volunteering for a nonprofit organization and getting a certification in violence prevention. My husband was also a volunteer. He was actually volunteering that day that I met him, where he was teaching the class. We were both very passionate about ways to prevent violence against women and children, and going out into the community and talking about the importance of prevention in this field. And in this film, Jonah meets London, and she and he had a lot of things in common, although they came from different parts of Los Angeles, almost like the other side of the tracks. Back to the approval of interracial marriages in the U.S., I want to say, based on this graph here, the statistics has gone from in the 1960s, we were at about a 4% approval rating, and now here in 2023, we are at a 94% approval rating. Not that I think we need anybody's approval of who we're going to love or who we're going to marry, but for some people, it's really important for them to have the approval of their family and their friends, because it makes it, I guess, for them very much easier to be able to navigate their marriage, especially when children are going to be involved. And I think that more and more people are choosing to love who they're going to love, and foregoing whatever it is that their family or their friends have to say about that. And I think that's a wonderful thing, because love is love at the end of the day. And if people can't accept who you choose to love, then that's really on them, not you. But let's get into stereotype based off of black women that are dating white men. So I began with black women dating white men because I'm a black woman and I'm married to a white man. And the stereotypes that I get are, well, I'm only dating him for his money.
Hey, must be the money!
I'm only dating him because I have a low self-esteem. Let me back up. We're no longer dating. We are married. But people that see us together just automatically assume, number one and foremost, that I'm in a marriage or relationship with my husband because he must have some money. He must be rich. I've been married to black men. I have children by black men. I love black men, and I have a son who's a young black man, and I sound like one of those people, I know tons of black people. I'm an equal opportunist dater, when it comes to dating who you love, just who you're interested in getting to know. Nothing because I think this person's gonna uplift me, or I'm looking to have some experience based on the flavors of the world. No, it just happened to meet those individuals based off of what I was doing in my life at that time, whether it was education or my job or where I lived. Didn't really matter to me. It's just like who this person is. I dated more stereotypically when I was in relationships with black men, like, oh, we're supposed to be like this, or we're supposed to be like that, or black love should look like this. I didn't get out of those relationships because they didn't live up to the black love, facade or anything, but because of infidelity on my partner's part or physical, mental, and emotional abuse. So those to me are reasons not to stay in a relationship regardless of the ethnic or racial background of an individual. When he and I are walking down the street, I get a lot of looks in the US, even in the UK, even though it's more accepted today, the looks that I would get, and oddly enough, more so from either black women or white women, more times black women than anything. Even in Africa, I've had people actually approach me and say things to me in Africa about being in the relationship with my white husband, and like literally, in their opinion, calling me out. Oh, you're with this guy because he takes care of you, because he's got money. It's like, no. My husband and I both take care of each other. We both are in the same financial background as the other. It's pretty equal. And there have been times where my husband was up in his career and I was up in my career. So it definitely was not based on finances because he was doing so much better and he lifted me out of the gutter or anything like that. But I do want to say that there are, unfortunately, some truths and some reality to this stereotype, whereas there are black women or African women from the diaspora that believe that getting into a relationship with a white man is going to elevate them. They base these stereotypes off of what they see on television. Oh, he's a white man, he'll be able to help me, he'll be able to provide for me, he's doing better in life than any other man. And they have this belief that their status is going to be elevated, and that is just not true either. And on the other side, there are some white men that eroticize, I hope I'm saying that word correctly, but where they eroticize black women. Oh, she's going to be really great in bed, she's going to be wild and freaky, and all this weird stuff that comes along with dating a black woman because of what they see on television and what they've heard. Just because you're a black woman, that doesn't mean you're better in bed or you're wild and you're crazy. And just because you're a white man, that doesn't mean you have money and you're rich and you're going to elevate this black woman from under her circumstances. That is a myth, but there is a reality to it, because there are some black women that date white men for that reason, and white men that date black women for that reason. So now let's get into black men that date white women, and let's look at some of the myths and the reality. Black men are statistically more likely to date out of their race than black women, and they're more likely to choose to date white women when they do so. And you can see here all the other statistics. However, the reason why black men may statistically choose to date white women is, again, the same reason why a black woman is likely to date a white man or other groups and ethnic backgrounds, because of their educational or social economic status in life. If, for example, it's more likely that the more successful black men tend to date white women. That's because where they work, who they're seeing on a day-to-day basis happens to be white women or other groups. Oh, he's only dating this white woman because he thinks he's better than black women, or now he can get a white woman because he's leveling up, or he can get a white woman and he forgot who he was and he's left us all behind. He very well may be dating this white woman because, you know, if he entered into college, then university, then, you know, graduate school, and then his profession, he's more likely surrounded by white people or other groups. And maybe he encounters black women, but maybe they're already in relationships too. So he's just opening up his opportunity to date who he wants and enter into relationships or marriage with the person that he gets along with best, or he feels more connected to. The same could be said for white women. White women may just choose to date this black man because there's an opportunity for her to date someone who gets along well with her. However, the stereotypes are, oh, well, she's dating him because he's got money. Would she date this black man if he didn't have money? Or she's dating him because he's a young buck that can lay it down in the bed, and horrible things like that. And again, you know, the black person being eroticized in the stereotype, whether he's good or bad or not, is, you know, between those two, we don't know. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all black men are better in bed than any other ethnic group or racial group, for that matter. But are there some realities to that? Absolutely. So there are some white women that think that if they have this experience with a black man, wow, they're going to be, you know, turned out and have the best sexual experience of their lives. Now, is that the truth? Not necessarily, but there are white women that enter into a relationship looking for that experience. I'm saying this because while this is a stereotype, there is a reality that some people do enter into both of these types of relationships because they want to experience these types of stereotypes. You have to look at couples for who they are, and, you know, if you have the opportunity, getting to know them before you stamp this stereotype and say, well, that's it, that's the one, and project your beliefs or project these stereotypes onto every single couple that is in an interracial relationship. So Asian women that choose to date out are more likely to do so if they live in the US or outside of East Asian and or Pacific Asian cultures. And that definitely could be, again, because they happen to be navigating in the same social economic groups, educational groups, and so forth. There statistically are not many Asians living in America or other European countries as there are other groups. The chances of them being in a relationship would mean that they're more likely to have to date out because there just aren't enough of them to necessarily mean that every Asian person that seeks to date an Asian man is going to be able to, because there aren't maybe the same ratio of Asian women to Asian men. Let's talk about some of these stereotypes that some Asian women face when they date white men. They're seen as using him for money or using him, a white man, to elevate their station, or being in a relationship with a white man because it'll make them appear better. Whereas white men are looked at as having yellow fever and fetishizing. The stereotype is really always targeted at how the women are perceived in these situations, which is pretty interesting to me. So it makes me wonder who's actually doing the casting or the projecting out of these stereotypes. And like I said, in my experience, more times than not, it has been women projecting the stereotypes at me than men. I'm interested to hear if you're in an interracial relationship and this is your experience as well. Yellow fever, similar to the phrase of jungle fever, is there someone's fetishizing you and it's like, ooh, I gotta have some of that, whatever that ethnic group is. There are some white men who date Asian women because they believe that they're more passive and that they're more easily to domesticate and that they'll be more subservient. And these are projected onto Asian women by white men who are fetishizing them. And these are stereotypes that are not necessarily true. However, there are white men that are only dating Asian women so that they can have that experience. And by the same circumstance, there are Asian women that are choosing to be in relationship with white men because they're hoping to have this experience with a white man rescuing them or saving them from their economic circumstances. Now, there is always some truth to stereotypes, but stereotypes are not necessarily the truth across the board. So again, be careful when you project your beliefs onto other groups and people. So let's look at Asian men, white women. Asian men and white women choose to date this individual because they're running in the same circle as this individual. When you look at some of the Asian actors in Hollywood that might be in relationships with white women, well, there are a lot more white women in Hollywood than there are Asian women. And when we're talking about in the US, some of the stereotypes, which are very little that I could find, is just that come from the Asian man wanting to date a white woman because he thinks that they're better and they're more beautiful because they're white. So these are like some of the 5 most populous racial categories that I'm mentioning here. We talked about Black, white, Asian, East Asian, and now we're going to talk a little bit about Hispanic or Latin individuals that choose to date out, and lastly, Indian or individuals from South Asia. So Hispanic women that choose to date white men are perceived as, again, leveling up or choosing to date someone because she will be rescued from her circumstances. At least this is the only stereotype that I could find. Whereas white men dating Latin women are doing so because they believe that, that she's going to be spicy and fire in bed. Again, these are stereotypes that people may choose to enter into the relationship but are not necessarily true. When a Latin woman dates a Black man, it's a huge difference than if she chooses to date a white man. In fact, some Latin women talk about being disowned from their family, having their partner literally physically or verbally attacked, insulted, and or abused by their family members, their community, or friends. I was reading this article that talked about some Latin women talked about how they ended the relationship because of the hostility that their partner received from their family, and some talking about the regrets that they actually had in not sticking up for their partner. Whereas, if a Latin woman dates a white man, it's not necessarily accepted within the Latin community. It's actually harsher than in the Asian community. Surprised me. But it's not as vicious as if a Latin woman dates a black man. Now, it didn't seem to me that a Latin woman was likely to date a black man for any of the stereotypical reasons other than that she loved him and that he loved her. I couldn't find like any stereotypical terms or things that were used when a Latin woman dates a black man. Couldn't find any, because they're both fetishized and eroticized by other groups and cultures, so it just canceled right on out. The same if when Latin men decided to date black women, canceled right on out. Just, sometimes coming from the same culture, sometimes coming from the same communities, the same social economic groups. So they just were attracted to each other, loved each other, and that was it. But there was more hostility and aggression from the Latin family members when a Latin man or a Latin woman chose to date an individual from a black man or a black woman. A lot more physical, verbal, and emotional hostility. So let's talk about Indian or South Asian individuals and what it looks like for them in some of the stereotypes. Indian men that choose to date black, white, Asian, or Latin women, they were more likely to date a white woman than any of the other groups. But it was likely that an Indian or South Asian man chose to date white women. If he's working in America or other European countries, he's more likely to come in contact with more white women than any other group of women, and so that is primarily why he chooses to date those women. The same could be said for white women, totally just choosing to date this guy because she likes him, because she's feeling him, because they connect. But so it's similar to white women who dates an Asian man from East Asia. But again, these are stereotypes and these are the myths that may hold some truth to them, because maybe those individuals are entering into those relationships because they want to have that type of experience and they believe that those stereotypes are true. I think I've covered each of these groups that I've at least done some research on, and wanted to just address that while there are many stereotypes that go along with what it looks like to date a person from a different ethnic or racial background, if someone is dating someone for any of the things that I mentioned, that person is who they are, and it doesn't matter what that other person looks like. That's just the experience that person is looking for, and they're just choosing this person that can fit the mold of that experience. Now let's get into some of the warning signs that you should look for if you get into an interracial relationship. If you're a black woman and you're thinking about dating a white man or a man from any other group, then look for the warning signs of, oh, I've never really dated a black woman. That's a warning sign. That's a warning phrase. Or I only date black women, or I only find black women attractive. Look for those signs, because anybody that uses that phrase, only, be warned. If a person has never dated someone that looks like them, or doesn't find someone that looks like them attractive, and they're like, I don't find fill in the blank attractive, and they happen to be a black, white, Asian man, then that's a red flag you should look for, because you don't want to date someone that doesn't find people that look more like them. And I'm talking about ethnically or racially. They might be fetishizing you and looking to have an experience with you that they think they're going to have because of your ethnic or racial background. Another red flag is if you meet somebody and their family is very hostile against you, I would say that's a red flag. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but you have to really think about how can you have a relationship with somebody if their family, their friends or community absolutely don't respect you or accept you for who you are as an individual. Another red flag would be whether or not any of their friends or people that they know use any fetishizing remarks when it comes to you, and whether or not this person is really looking to get into a serious relationship. You want to also look at what their values are in bringing up children, if that's something that you're going to explore, because especially if you speak a different language, if they're opposed to it, if they're in favor of it, do they project their way of living onto you and completely squash your cultural background and beliefs? Then that's a red flag. You don't want to get into a relationship with somebody that's like, well, I'm white and you should think white, or I'm black and you should think like we do, black people do. We should only eat this kind of food. I don't like Asian food or Spanish food or whatever, Latin food. You should definitely consider that a red flag. So that's it for now. This is a very long video and thorough, and I hope that you guys appreciated some of the information that I shared today and some of the stats. But as always, if you've watched this video and you're thinking about getting into an interracial, intercultural relationship with somebody, or exploring dating someone from a different race or ethnicity, then and you just don't really know what to do, then please do feel free to reach directly out to me by visiting my website at findinghappily.com, and you and I can certainly take that journey together.